New defensive coordinator Chris O'Leary spoke with the media for the first time, saying he wants to build on the foundation that Jesse Minter built, meaning the Chargers once again could have one of the top defenses in the NFL.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, we finally get to hear from the Chargers' new defensive coordinator, Chris O'Leary, and it is definitely understandable why the Chargers went with him. It was clear they wanted to keep some continuity with this defense, and this was one of the best answers to be able to do that. He also was able to tell us that he wants to keep most of his defensive staff that was here with the Chargers, as they were an elite staff. And he gives us a little bit of a sneak peek of why he's so excited about working with Derwin James and potentially Odafe Oweh again.
Yeah, hopefully he gets a say on Odafe Oweh being back in LA in 2026. But it was great hearing from him. We've been waiting for this press conference, right? It's been a week since we heard from Mike McDaniel, or a little over. And now we finally got to hear more from the guy we haven't got to hear much from, even in his time before with the Chargers, and that's Chris O'Leary. And I think some of the main things that were on people's mind are, what is this defense going to look like? How much different is it going to be than his predecessor, Jesse Minter? You know, how much did Jesse Minter kind of influence the defense that he's going to be running in Los Angeles? And we got answers to all of those questions on Tuesday. And I want to start just with the fact that he says that they're keeping it the same. That was something that was, talked about a lot, and we assumed it would, right? You go back and look at his Western Michigan team, like you can see that the Jesse Minter in it, but we didn't know for sure exactly what he planned to do. And I think he gave the right answer to that in his press conference when he said, we're really focused on taking what we've built and the foundation that's laid and taking it to another level. And David, obviously, if he can do that, and there is at least some faith, because for a lot of guys, it's basically, the Minter defense in year 301, basically, right? Then you have hope that, hey, maybe they can just build on top of it, won't lose as much as we hoped, or lose as much from Jesse Minter, and can keep this as one of the best units.
And it's quite understandable why the Chargers would want to keep this defensive scheme in place. In 2024, they were the #1 scoring defense in the NFL, allowing 17.7 points per game. In 2025, 19.8 points per game, which was still good for 8th best in the NFL. And you even look at what Coach O'Leary did at Western Michigan, 9th ranked scoring defense in the nation, allowing only 17.4 points per game. Quite simply, this defense works. They want to keep it. They want to have somebody who is an expert in it, and Chris O'Leary seems to be the guy to be that answer.
Yeah, and he also just said, a lot of the verbiage is the same. Like, all of those things are helpful when you're trying to keep something together and keep intact a unit that, has played exceptionally well. And the other part of it is like, we know that many of the pieces that are already on the roster fit the system that he's going to be running, which I think also gives some of that hope that they can maintain their status as one of the better defenses in the NFL. And also, I think that for the Chargers, just knowing that you're not going to tear it down from a schematic standpoint was always going to be a huge advantage. And like I said before, like, you go watch, what Western Michigan did, and you're like, hey, this defense does look familiar. And when asked, if that defense was what he was running in Western Michigan, basically what he had learned from Jesse Minter, he said, the core philosophies and fundamentals are what I picked up in LA. But he also said, there's elements of other coaches he has worked with, like Marcus Freeman, the head coach of Notre Dame, Al Golden, who's the Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator now, Clark Lee, who's the Vanderbilt head coach. So that's kind of what we expected, David, where it's like, yes, it is going to be Jesse Minter's defense, and you see a little bit of that, but there are going to be some wrinkles in it, because Jesse Minter isn't the only influence that he has.
Yeah, he's been to a couple of other stops, but yeah, he wasn't lying when he said, or bashful about saying there was a lot of crossover in the defense that he had over there at Western Michigan and what the Chargers deployed, obviously, the last few years under Jesse Minter. And I think that's the right approach. You want to make sure that you have somebody who is well-versed in this defense. And Chris O'Leary has been able to show that, he can pick up those core philosophies and be able to implement them and have success, but also be able to take some of the characteristics of some of the other coaches that he got to work with and be able to add his own little flavor to what this defense is.
Exactly. And like the thing is too, is it's also just kind of like a proof of concept, right? Like this defense works with this guy running the show. And for him to be able to kind of take a collegiate team that was pretty down in the ranks as far as where they ranked nationally as far as the defense, and be able to install this defense, which to me isn't the easiest, right? Like we've seen Gus Bradley. He's been the Chargers defensive coordinator, but we know like what a simplified defense looks like. It's not necessarily this. And he was able to implement that at the collegiate level, show that he could have a ton of success doing it. And now, I think that also kind of builds the confidence that, hey, he can continue doing what Jesse Minter's been doing because he's already kind of been doing that. And honestly, even just to get the players at a collegiate level to run that scheme as impressively as they did was awesome. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think if you want to see kind of what it could look like, what he was running at Western Michigan, obviously against much lesser competition, it's not going to look exactly the same. You can see a lot of those elements, and you can see why the Chargers were excited to hire this guy, because when it comes down to what they want from this defense and what he thinks are kind of the non-negotiables of this defense, it is similar to what Jesse Minter, was running, and he is keeping those Jesse Minter kind of the pillars of success defensively, or also what they were calling at the press conference today, the separators.
Yes, the separators, which are detailed as ball disruption, tackling, effort and angles, communication, and block destruction. He said, the standards that you demand, the separators that we apply, all of those things show up in the game, and you can't get it back. You can't just all of a sudden flip a switch and say, hey, we want to be violent and fast. We want to play square. We want to get off blocks, because you have to build that in throughout the week and prepare through fall camp and all of those things. So he just means like, hey, these are the things that we truly believe successful defenses are built around. Elite defenses have all of these characteristics, and he took those same characteristics with him to Western Michigan as well.
He did, and something we talked about was him kind of doing the same thing that Jesse Minter did, and Daniel Popper had laid it out great in the article he had about Chris O'Leary's press conference, where basically Jesse Minter had these 5 different pillars of success, right? And he gave each coach, each position coach, one thing to focus on. So as Popper outlined it in his article, Chris O'Leary was the guy that had to come up with, the meetings on ball disruption and come up with examples of how the Chargers could be more disruptive, get the football in their hands, create takeaways and things of that nature. And it was nice, to hear that when Daniel Popper asked him about it, he plans to keep doing that, because basically what he's saying is, hey, we're going to have all of these things. Every coach is going to be relaying all of these messages, but each of these coaches is going to be uniquely kind of involved in what that looks like and getting their own spin on it. And I think that's something that a good kind of delegator, a good kind of leader does, right? Is keeping the coaching staff involved and the players involved. He also said we tailored some things from Daniel Popper so it became a little bit more concise, but 100% it's fundamental defensive football. Wherever you go, that's step one of creating an elite defense. And that's the thing. You do all those things, you're going to be a great defense, period, right? Like,
no doubt.
And that is the funny thing about, with Chris O'Leary specifically, is like he thinks the Chargers can do it better, right? Like he thinks he can even, build on top of what Jesse Minter's doing, improve upon what Jesse Minter is doing. And how does that look, right? Like we don't know the talent, like the talent that he's going to be working with, and Jesse Minter is going to be some different players and all of that. But you believe him when he says it. Like the dude has some juice, and really kind of knew exactly what it seems like he knows exactly what he wants to do with this defense. And like, you're right. You can't just decide, hey, even though we kind of practice soft all week, on Sunday, we're really going to turn it on and we're going to be the more physical team and we're going to win the line of scrimmage. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Like, all of that stuff has to be built in, not in the game week leading up to the game. It has to be built in, as he put it, like in fall camp for the Chargers to be in training camp. Like, that's where these disciplines are built. And for the Chargers, at least, you have a set of leaders. You have a set of players that are already willing and shown they're able to hold other players accountable and hold other players to that standard. So I don't think he's going to have a hard time having to prove to these guys these things work because they already know. And they know these are the things they have to do to be a great defense, which is why it's easy to be confident that this thing could work with Chris O'Leary at the helm. But there was so much more than that, because I thought other great news is the Chargers think they're going to pretty much keep their defensive staff intact, which is something we did not think they'd be able to do, especially after passing over a couple of those guys for the defensive coordinator role. So we're going to talk about that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online, and they handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app, and it's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th, take taxes off your plate, and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. This episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. And it honestly can feel like everyone else has it all together when it comes to their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off of yourself. Therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing your relationships down. For me, I know one of the things that helped me with is building kind of the communication and also giving me the set of skills to be able to help myself work through some of the problems and see some of the things that maybe I'm overreacting about at times. But even if you're not in a relationship, therapy can help you feel more confident in what you want moving forward. The biggest thing, it reminds you that you're not behind, you're right on time. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the U.S. that do initial matching work for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do it at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Dave, we still have more to get to from this Chris O'Leary press conference, which I thought was enlightening, and I thought it was pretty exciting hearing kind of what his vision is for this defense. But one of the bigger things that he kind of told us on Tuesday was that he doesn't think the staff is going to change much. And that is something we've been kind of waiting on with bated breath just to see, because some of these things can take a little bit of time. Some coaches could be replaced, right? We don't know exactly how it is all going to shake out. The only thing we know at this point is they don't have Navarro Bowman, and they're going to have to, find somebody in his place, and they haven't found that guy yet. But when he was asked about it, he said, or the staff, he said, we've done the defense at a really high level the last couple of years. If we get the opportunity to keep the staff as intact as possible, that's what I want to do, and that is music to my ears.
Yes, it absolutely is, because I think we've seen several examples up and down this defense of these position coaches being able to really develop these players and get the most out of them. You've seen growth from the guys on the defensive line. You've seen the guys in the secondary, guys that were drafted in the 5th round, like Tarheeb Steele and Cam Hart, be able to come in right away and be effective and play high quality football for you. We haven't seen that at all in previous regimes under Tom Telesco. Very, very few and far between, but we've seen here under this organization, this regime, under this defensive coaching staff, that players have gotten better under the tutelage of these coaches. So I'm very happy that he wants to keep all of the guys that he possibly can, because these guys are proven commodities.
They are, and they really, when he says they're some of the best in the world, like I agree, and that's why I was worried that they could leave for greener pastures or promotions with other organizations, and I wouldn't have batted an eye, because it would have made sense, because by him saying this, you were saying that you get to keep Steve Clinkscale, who has worked wonders with not just the 2 former 5th round picks, but also guys like Dante Jackson and Benjamin St. Juste, and then Mike Elston, who just got, basically changed Tierra Tart's life and got him to the point where he's getting life-changing money in the deal that he just signed with the Chargers. Like, to be able to keep those guys, and to your point, be able to have the faith that you can still find bounce-back candidates for cheap, something that's been a core kind of model for this team over these first couple of years, and maximize the talent on that side of the ball. Like, those coaches aren't changing. Yes, like, Chris O'Leary has to call the plays, but you still have the guys in place that have been helping kind of turn these guys' careers around and helping the development of these young players. But at the end of the day, him being able to call those plays is really to us kind of what got him that job, right? The experience of doing it. When asked about calling plays there, he said, the experience to call plays was incredible. There's a flow state in calling plays. Everything you do during the week is just as important as what you do on game day. That's from Alex Insdorf, who had that transcription. And that's so true, David. Like, there's just certain things you don't know how you're going to do at it until you do it. And even at the collegiate level, like, it doesn't matter that much because there's just certain things, no matter kind of where you're calling the plays, you get a certain sense for having actually done it.
Yeah, and like it's just invaluable experience, not only calling plays, but you're calling plays in this same scheme, this same defense, and you're doing it recently and having a lot of success. He even said, he admitted, he's like, you know, the first couple of drives, I gave up like 3 or 4 touchdowns in a row. And
I think it was Michigan State just to beat them down at the very beginning of the game. I think like 3 or 4 straight touchdown drives.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's tough, you know, those are tough lessons, but that's where a lot of the growth happens, right? When you make those mistakes and you get a chance, an opportunity to be able to improve on those and grow from those. And he obviously clearly did as he went on. You know, he said 2 or 3, 4 games in, he started to really feel comfortable, really get confident in what he was doing out there and, you know, who he was going to be as a coordinator. And obviously that turned into one of the best scoring defenses in the country.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, there are probably plenty of coaches out there that can make a hell of a game plan, right? Who can script exactly what they should do in a game. But, like, until you're actually the one calling the plays, you don't know what happens once you're smacked in the mouth and things don't go your way right away, right?
And you got to adjust.
And you don't get those adjustments. You don't get, like, evolving on the fly unless you're doing it. And that's what he said. Like, you know, like when you're actually calling the plays and you get downs and distances and you get red zone and you get situational football that you just can't always simulate. You get whoever, you know, the opposing game caller is and how they adjust to the game and how that chess match works with you kind of coming up with a counter for that. Like, all of those things, whether it's Western Michigan or the NFL, that's very valuable experience. Like, you just can't replicate that flow state that he's talking about. Like setting up a sim pressure here, right? Just to come back and make it look the same way, but you're actually doing something different late in the game. That is what separates play callers and what makes someone a great play caller. And that's by him saying this, you're kind of being like, yes, like that is true. And it is important that you went. And not only did you do it, you showed that you could, you know, you had a major success doing it, David. Yeah. So like, I thought that was great to hear from him. And I think that was obviously to us a huge part of why he's in the position he is right now, which is taking over for the guy who gave him his start in Jesse Minter, because these dudes go way back, you know, gave him his first graduate assistant job as far as, you know, his coaching side of things, but also played on the team at Indiana State where, you know, you have a young Chris O'Leary playing wide receiver and Jesse Minter coaching defensive backs on the other side and them going back and forth there, you know. So like this is something that was forged a long time ago, and it's pretty cool that he gets to follow in those footsteps.
Yeah, no, it really is. He said he fell in love with defense there. The first job I got was as a defensive line GA. I didn't know anything about defensive line. I walked in every day. It was a struggle. You talk about stripping away your ego, being humble, finding a way to add value to a room that you have no idea what's going on. That was the start of my career as a coach. So, I mean, that is really funny because, you know, coming from a scout team quarterback, you know, turned into a wide receiver and then, you know, getting your chance as a defensive coach where you have absolutely no experience or no expertise in and really having to just dive in head first and learn from the ground up. And, you know, this is a guy who has been with Jesse Minter at multiple different stops at different places. And, you know, I'm sure this is a great honor to be able to take the position, take the mantle that he just obviously was relieved of in lieu of the promotion of being a head coach, which is as a coach, you know, what you want to achieve. And so this seems like a great stepping stone, a fantastic opportunity for Chris O'Leary to be able to show what he's capable of and see where he gets to eventually get to in his coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, that's the angle always, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think like to think that he was doing defensive line and for Jesse Minter to be like, hey, you can coach for me, but you're going to, as a former wide receiver, going to be coaching the defensive line. And I think that must, you know, forge something in you as a young coach to have to kind of completely learn a new position, because me and you talked about it, like this is an offensive guy at heart, right? This is the guy who he was saying was playing scout team quarterback for Indiana State and talking trash to not just Jesse, but Rick Minter as
Yeah,
well,
his dad.
as he was throwing touchdowns on them in practice. So this goes back a long way, but I mean, you know, he also said like that's where he learned like energy, passion, the violence between the white lines. But says he also takes, you know, Jim Harbaugh is one of the first things he said to his team last year. Competitors welcome, like taking all of those things and, you know, taking over for somebody. He said, I've seen him as a mentor of mine for my entire coaching career. Like that is pretty cool. And like you feel confident he can follow and is ready to follow in those gigantic footsteps that Jesse Minter left. But one of the big things that's going to determine that success is how much he can get out of Derwin James. And even after back-to-back all-pro seasons, he thinks he can get even more out of him than Jesse Minter was. And we're getting into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. As the new year gets going, a lot of people trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy workdays, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. I mean, the meals are delicious. I have my Home Chef meals, and like, when I tell you I have a picky 2-year-old and my 2-year-old loves pretty much everything I get from Home Chef, like that is as big of an endorsement as I can get, but also just with not a lot of time, like to have something, you know, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays for quick lunches, and a bunch of different options and the variety, because no matter how good it is, you need to be able to switch things up every once in a while too. So you can get all of that with Home Chef, and for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert. Let's be real, no one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in, to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one, remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or the hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month, and Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save hours every single week, and knowing that you can reach a certified HR expert anytime gives you real peace of mind as well. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months for free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. David, we still have some more to get into, including his thoughts on a couple of players on the Chargers, one current and one hopefully back for the 2026 season in Odafe Oweh. But let's start with Derwin James, because when he was talking about Derwin James, you could see him light up, right? And you know Derwin James is excited about this as well, because we know that Chris O'Leary was the safeties coach in 2024. And, I mean, Derwin James has given him, Jesse Minter has given him a lot of credit for getting Derwin James accustomed to what his new role was going to be, which was using his talents best, getting him in the nickel or slot position, right, and keeping him close to the football so he could have the biggest impact. And all that's resulted in is, you know, 2 of the best years of his career in 2024 and 2025. And the crazy thing is he thinks that he can actually do an even better job than what we've seen from him over these last 2 years.
Yeah, he basically said, how, he envisions Derwin's role and how he can get better. Attention to detail, like being better at what he already does. This time, that's time on task. That's watching film. That's making sure we all speak the same language between the coaches that are in the room, myself, him, just really streamlining his mindset and his process. To me, the best version of himself when there's clarity. And we always say clarity equals velocity. And so if we give him more clarity, he's going to play faster. And I think we've seen that. And they even mentioned, and Daniel Popper mentioned in his fantastic article about this press conference is, when they took more off of Derwin's plate, he was able to go out there and play faster and let his instincts and natural God-given ability take over. When he was in Brandon Staley's system, there was too much on his plate. He had to think too much, and he couldn't really allow his unbelievable gifts to really show themselves. When you said, hey, Like, this is what I want you to do. This is going to be your role. This is how I want you to impact the game. You saw Derwin James be the all-pro we all know he is.
Yeah, and like honestly, kind of with the roster and flex that it is right now after the season, like he is the star that you have. Like he is the star that you know is being back in 2026 for sure, right? Him, Dayon Henley's probably right, level below that as far as hasn't kind of reached that stardom yet. But like that's it, Khalil Mack a free agent, Odafe Oweh a free agent as well. But I think for Derwin James, for someone as physically gifted as him, yes, it's simplify things, let him play fast, let him play downfield. Let him get after the quarterback if you want to kind of find the best ways to use him. But as you saw last year too, like if you need him to lock up Travis Kelce and get the game-winning interception, he has that ability, and he has a coach, right, that has seen exactly what he can do and has firsthand knowledge and hands-on experience with helping him get to the level that he's at right now. But when he was asked about what players might be different from the last time he was here and who impressed him from last season while he was away at Western Michigan, it was very interesting that he brought up Odafe Oweh first. Like, that was the first name he said. The smile that he had on his face, I think, told you everything you needed to, know about how he feels about Odafe Oweh. Because I think what he saw last year, and probably one of the reasons that I'm sure Jesse Minter is kind of banging on Joe Ortiz's door to go get somebody like an Odafe Oweh, is how well he fit in the system. So I don't think this is a guarantee by any means, David, but I think with one thing that we can say certainly that we can take away from this Chris O'Leary press conference is, if it's up to him, the Chargers will back up the Brinks truck to bring Odafe Oweh back if he has anything to say about it.
And he absolutely should. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has back-to-back seasons of 10-plus sacks if you include the playoff game that the Chargers had. 7.
Yeah, he has
in the regular
two
season.
10-plus sack seasons if you include that game, for sure.
Exactly, back-to-back here. So, we're talking about a guy who has some talent and was able to really flourish with the Chargers, with this group, with this defensive staff here. He was fantastic. His athleticism, his length was really on display, man. Like, he was so fast, bending around the corner, just making offensive linemen's life a living hell with that length. I mean, it's really, really hard to deal with. Like, he's a monster, and he really showed it. The last time we got to see him on the field, he made an emphatic statement. And for Chris O'Leary, I think he has a pretty attractive pitch to be able to say, like, hey, at Western Michigan, Nadame Tucker is a guy who's going to get drafted pretty high because of what he was able to do in Chris O'Leary's defensive scheme. 14 and a half sacks. We're talking, that's a lot, that's impacting the game.
I think. Yeah.
Second most in the country. That's big time. So it's like, hey, Odafe, I know how to maximize edge rushers. I will put them in positions to have success. I've done it. Here's the proof.
Well, I think the other thing is, too, is like the other, he also kind of had that big season in a Jesse Minter defense. Could he go back to Jesse Minter? But he was just traded from the Ravens, and he could just chase a bag. You just never know. Like, I mean, might be a really bad team that's willing to pay him, maybe not Myles Garrett money, but whatever the next tier below that is. And maybe they just get outbid, which is why the emphasis should be on him, trying to not let him test free agency and figuring out what he could make. And I think that also, starts with, like you said, I think Chris O'Leary has to kind of be, and I would have to think he would be, in that pitch meeting to try to bring him back and saying, look, I can, help you, maintain that level, because you're right. Like, not just the length that he brings to the table, but the athleticism. Like, the athleticism to go chase down more athletic quarterbacks. It was something they were desperately missing. That kind of change of direction and fluid motion is not something that Khalil Mack and Tuli bring to the table, and this guy just feels like such an obvious fit alongside Tuli as far as what they bring to the table and how they complement each other. Make it happen, as we talked about
Yin and yang
on yesterday's show. But I think there's one thing that's pretty clear just from hearing him, David, especially, today, that was kind of fortified, which is just he is a relationships coach. He's a player's coach. We saw that in the small little mic'd ups that we saw, and I'm very, very excited to see him mic'd up over the summer when we get to see that. And, I think his press conferences will be something you don't want to miss. But it's just very clear, whether it's Derwin James, whether it's how guys talked about him when he was hired, like, this is a guy that knows, like Jesse Minter did, that relationships matter. Getting that investment matters from your players, and that is a big reason why I think it will work out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it when he first got hired. All of the players, pretty much universally, were very excited that he was coming back to be their defensive coordinator. And he does very much believe in relationships. It's a big part of how he coaches. He said, I think all of the guys here see me as a coach, see me as a guy that's going to push them and elevate them and rally, pull the most out of them. Again, as a player, that's what you want. All they want is a coach that loves them, respects them as a person, and wants what is best for them and ultimately makes them better. Can you demand more from me than I think I have? That's our job as coaches. So that's how he believes. He truly wants to have that relationship where his players respect him, trust him, and also are not afraid to hear and really have him demand the most out of them.
Agree with that. And I think one thing you always hear is, coaches kind of tailoring their defense to the talent and the players that they have. But I think one interesting thing that he said is like, it's also like that on a personal level too. Like how you coach every player isn't the same way, right? And he said, I just try to tailor the way that I interact with those guys, teach those guys to what they need and want. And what he's saying by that is someone like Derwin James, it's about simplifying. It's about, making him faster and making him have to think less. Whereas, when talking about him helping Elijah Molden get to the level he was at, he was saying he's the opposite of that. He wants to know everything. He has all the questions. He wants to know how people work. And that is part of being a great coordinator. And he said, the relationship doesn't really change much from when he was a position coach to now being the defensive coordinator. Like the relationship with that guy is the relationship with that guy. And he said, creating genuine relationships like love, care. I'm invested in the guys in this building. And I think they'll see that on a day-to-day basis. And to me, that I just think that getting that buy-in, getting that belief from your players is just huge because it means they will be invested in how it all comes together and they'll trust the process because they know there's proven results behind it. And they know this is a dude that really cares about them, right? So all of those things, like, you have to win the press conference, but like this is somebody we have seen be the Chargers coach. We know kind of what the Jesse Minter tree looks like at this point, and Mike McDonald and the guys that have had a lot of success around the league. Now, it doesn't always work. Zach Orr didn't really work for him last year, right? And he turned things around a little bit, but still, I have faith that this is one of those guys that's going to be able to pick up that mantle and keep the Chargers with a legit defense that's worthy of, making a playoff run, which I think is so important when you might only have 1 year of Mike McDaniel on the other side. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. As you know, though, this is the only daily Chargers podcast out there, so we'll make sure we are back here tomorrow with the latest news and whatever's going on. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, where we will probably try to do another fan show because we know we've missed a lot of them on Friday. So if you guys want to hit us up, you can do that on all those places or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. And thank you guys as always for watching today's show and listening to today's show. And if you want an ad-free version of the audio podcast of this show, you can do that now in the Locked On Everydayer Club for $5 a month. You can get an ad-free audio podcast to never have to listen to the ads if you don't want to. That is an option now. And you can do that and also be part of the Locked On Chargers exclusive Discord channel. So something we're building right now. We're always going to have the same, and we're planning on putting out even more content, the most content that we've ever put out in 2026. So make sure you guys are here for that, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the Locked On Discord as well, right? Some of the things that we have planned for this offseason. But thank you for checking out today's show. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.